Hello everyone, and welcome to the 280th episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Mysterio from Spider-Man Far From Home. If you're a fan of my videos, consider signing up to become a patron over on Patreon, where you can get access to my videos a day early, ad-free, and uncensored for as little as $2 a month. One of the more widely requested characters from the MCU, Mysterio, as portrayed by Jake Gyllenhaal, was quite the interesting villain to watch in action, and considering the newest Spider-Man film is just around the corner, I figured it was about time we got around to covering another character from Spider-Man's rogue gallery. So without further ado, let's begin. Not much is known about Quentin Beck aside from the fact that he was once employed by Stark Industries, but during his tenure there, Beck developed a highly advanced holographic system capable of creating hyper-realistic environments, which Beck viewed as a revolutionary achievement, believing that his new invention was capable of changing the world in so many ways, which it very well could have. However, when Tony Stark presented Beck's creation to the public, he decided to do what Tony does best, add some of his signature flair to the project, and he did so by labeling it Binarily Augmented Retro Framing, or BAR for short. Now, having your creation made a mockery of with such a name is liable to infuriate anyone, and that's exactly what happened with Beck when he heard it, as he interpreted this name as a personal insult designed to humiliate him in front of an audience. And honestly, you can't really blame him for thinking so. But in reality, this presentation and the name Tony gave his creation wasn't as cruel as he thought it was. In the flashback we're shown from Beck's perspective, the audience at Stark's presentation is laughing at him. However, objective footage from Captain America Civil War shows a silent, attentive audience. And furthermore, when Stark was unveiling Barf, he was actually praising it for helping him deal with the trauma of losing his parents. But because Tony was who he was, his personality made it seem like he wasn't taking it too seriously. And when he decided to use the acronym BARF to name it, he wasn't trying to embarrass Beck. Rather, it's that Tony just really liked using acronyms when naming things, which is highlighted for us during the scene where Peter is talking with Edith for the first time. Now this confirms something very important for us, that being that Beck's humiliation was entirely internal. Stark did take Beck's creation and make it his own, giving it a name and a purpose, that purpose being as a therapeutic tool designed to help people cope with their trauma. But ultimately, Quentin projected his own insecurities onto the crowd. He viewed Stark as a jester king, not because Stark was cruel, but because Stark's casual brilliance made Beck feel insignificant. What fueled his hatred of him even more, though, is the fact that not long after this, Tony would fire Beck. But the reason Tony fired Beck wasn't without merit either, as according to Beck, the reason why he was fired was because Tony claimed he was unstable. And given his behavior in this film, it's not hard to see how Tony came to this conclusion, especially when you consider that Beck may have gone berserk on Tony after this presentation. But even if he didn't, there could have been any number of reasons why Tony viewed Beck as unstable and chose to let him go. Whatever the case may be, Tony, despite his flaws, was a reasonable man, and he wouldn't have fired a genius like Beck if he didn't think he was capable of causing harm to his company or people in general. So in response to what he perceived to be mistreatment from his former employer, Quentin Beck decided to embark upon the path of revenge, which led him to formulating the horrifying plot that we see playing out in this film. But he didn't do so alone. For many people who had also been let go from Stark Industries readily flocked to Beck's banner, and these followers of his were no better than Beck himself. Like Beck, all of these people probably weren't fired for illegitimate reasons, which is exemplified for us by one of his cohorts, Reva, who was fired from Stark Industries because he assisted in Obadiah Stane's plan to build a suit capable of unleashing mass destruction, which then resulted in Obadiah wreaking havoc and causing harm to innocent people. We don't know why the other members were let go, but I think it's safe to say it was due to similar circumstances. So just like Beck, their hatred of Tony Stark is unjustifiable, as it's reasonable to assume that each and every one of their grievances stems from the fact that they screwed up in some way and are refusing to accept responsibility for their own actions, instead throwing tantrums and blaming all their woes on a man who quite literally saved the entire world. And when you consider Beck's actions in this story, all of this only serves to highlight something very crucial about Beck's character. His bitterness, but also his envy of Tony Stark and his need to prove that he's the greatest genius who ever lived. As in his mind, Tony Stark was unworthy to wield the technology and power that he had, and therefore, all the fame, wealth, and prestige that he earned should by rights go to someone like him. And the reason why he thinks like this is because Beck is a narcissist with an incredible intellect who's not just a genius inventor, but a master manipulator as well, which is made all too evident for us by his aforementioned plan and the way he carries it out. Denied any sort of direct revenge against Tony Stark due to his death, Beck chose to do the next best thing, become the next superpowered genius who would be able to take over Stark Industries and Tony's place as one of the most, if not the most beloved hero on Earth. And in order to accomplish this, Beck concluded that the only way to do so would be to become a hero on par with, or even greater than Iron Man. But crucially, Beck's primary skill set as far as technology is concerned was in crafting devices capable of creating illusions. So instead of perhaps creating a suit like Tony's and fighting any threats that appeared, or creating some real threats in some way, he chose to manufacture his entire persona and those threats so he could appear as a hero while never actually being one, or putting himself in any real danger. But as I already mentioned, Beck didn't do this alone, and in fact, he probably wasn't capable of doing it alone, or at least doing it as well as he and his crew managed to in this story. As to execute this plan, each one of the ex-Stark employees he recruited had a specific role to play in the creation of what would become the world's greatest hero, Mysterio. Janice was the one who found out the location of Edith, a highly advanced AI system that held the keys to the vast resources of Stark's technological empire. From there, it was Gutterman who helped create a narrative about a soldier from another dimension, whose home was destroyed by monsters known as elementals, by using myths from history as inspiration to make it seem more plausible, as well as a false backstory for Beck wherein he lost his family to give him some heroic emotional weight that would make him into a tragic figure that the public would gravitate toward. And while this backstory would seem a bit far-fetched in our own world, in the world of the MCU, myths have proven to be realities and not fiction, and so Beck's origins lying somewhere in an alternate dimension worked as the perfect cover-up for Beck's real-world persona. Reva was the one who invented and programmed the deadly weaponized drones that were equipped with Beck's technology. But to make this all seem real, Victoria was the one who helped pad this deception by hacking into Nick Fury's satellites to use electromagnetic pulses that created more concrete evidence that the world was under attack from the elementals. So after all this planning, the elementals were unleashed, and Beck's plot to become the latest and greatest superhero began. And with the deaths of who knows how many innocents as his drone-powered illusions ravaged people all across the world, it seemed that he was well on his way to getting his revenge and becoming the icon that he always wanted to be. But as diabolical, well thought out, and well executed as his plan was, that plan would have been nothing without the masterful performance by Beck as he played the part of Mysterio. When we first meet Beck as Mysterio, he's firm, polite, and has a sense of humor. An amiable-seeming man who is only trying to help save this world from the terror that his world was forced to experience. A hero if there ever was one, who only deserves sympathy and praise. This works not only to fool Nick Fury, but everyone else who meets him as well, especially Peter Parker, who takes Beck's bait hook, line, and sinker, which allows Beck to present himself to Peter in much the same way that Tony eventually did, as a mentor, offering him kind words of wisdom and encouraging Peter to follow his dream, and giving him lines like, "Don't ever apologize for being the smartest one in the room," which only further convinces Peter that Quentin is a man to be trusted. Now it should be noted that these aren't just manipulation tactics, as in all likelihood, Beck was projecting his own self-image onto Peter, and for that reason, he genuinely liked Peter because he saw in him a younger version of his own genius. And even though he is manipulating Peter and seems to be self-absorbed in many ways, he also seems to have a certain amount of respect for other people in this story, like his team, who he even congratulates for their commitments at one point. But just because he might have respect for some people, doesn't mean he values them, as when Peter falls for Beck's trap, he uses his drones against Peter and puts him through a nightmarish horror show, and he also has no problem threatening to kill his team if they don't obey his orders. So with that in mind, whatever respect he does have for Peter is ultimately irrelevant, as all of these early interactions with him were all carefully crafted to ensure Beck would get his hands on Edith, and it's that moment where he finally acquires Edith that this mask he was wearing fades away. Here in the bar we're shown the real Beck, an egotistical braggart who revels in fame, one who's more concerned with how his cape drapes in the final battle than the ethics of his actions. As to Beck, the world is a stage, and he's the only actor whose performance matters. Now even though he's quite hubristic in these moments, Beck is still very careful about how he goes about his schemes, and it's only when he feels it's safe to let that mask slip that he does so, as he knows that he's dealing with powerful people that should never be underestimated. And a big part of the reason why Beck is so cautious is because his creations have forced him to be. Because all of Beck's plans are hinged on illusory technology, Beck has essentially been forced to adopt a mindset where he's constantly examining and re-examining the smallest of details in order to make his illusions seem as real as possible, which only serves to ensure Beck's plans are nearly flawless. This is best exemplified for us when he and his crew were doing a test run of the final battle, and Beck caught a glitch in the London simulation that Reva missed. Worried that the device could be used as evidence of his plans, he uses Edith to hunt down a single missing projector because he knows that in a world of illusions, one loose thread unravels the whole tapestry. But another great example of his attention to detail is found during the final battle, when he got a reading that something was disturbing the drones, and when Reva assured him that it was nothing, Beck checked anyway to be sure, and lo and behold, he found out that Peter was sabotaging the drones. These things are what allow us to label Beck a careful planner, one who will do anything to get what he wants, and one who doesn't care at all about the lives he harms as he attempts to get what he wants. As to Beck, the lives of others are nothing but a means to an end, which we see during this aforementioned test run, where Beck ordered his team to program the drones to cause more damage than they had previously. And when one of his collaborators mentioned that there's going to be more casualties, Beck's only response is to say, "The more casualties, the better," plainly showing us that he's a man who's willing to risk or destroy countless innocent lives in order to make himself into the hero he wants to be seen as. That being said, despite all the death he caused or would have caused, Beck doesn't seem to be a sadist. While he does enjoy plotting and scheming, he never kills for the sake of pleasure. He kills for the sake of the narrative. And while this is exemplified for us through his rather casual approach to murder and mayhem, it's also shown to us in his hesitancy when it comes to killing Peter Parker. When Peter discovers Beck's plan, he's angry, but he's also upset that he now has to kill Peter to keep his plan a secret, something that he apparently never wanted to do. And during their confrontation, he says to Peter that he does feel sorry for having to kill him. Not sorry enough to spare Peter, just sorry that he had to do it. For anything must be done for the might and glory of Mysterio. And if it wasn't for Spider-Man, Mysterio may very well have become the ultimate illusion, one where a spiteful and self-centered man was able to successfully project himself as the world's greatest hero. But unfortunately for Beck, Mysterio's reign was always destined to be short-lived, even if he did succeed, as despite Beck's great intellect, there's a glaring flaw with his plan that he just couldn't see that guaranteed Mysterio's downfall, no matter what the outcome was: his lack of forward thinking. When you really take apart Beck's plan, all it does is guarantee short-term success while sacrificing long-term stability. As after Mysterio defeats this fake Avengers-level threat, what comes after? Do you keep staging fake attacks to keep up this ruse, all the while hoping that nothing happens that leads to their secret being revealed? What if people started asking more questions? As even if he succeeded in killing Nick Fury, how long could he have kept this lie going before someone eventually discovered the truth? And furthermore, what if an actual threat to the world presented itself? In the world of the MCU, power-hungry villains appear almost on a yearly basis. What if a mad god like Loki, or worst of all, an intergalactic being that threatens all of existence like Thanos comes along, with plans to destroy the world? What then? Beck would be useless, as drones and projectors are far from being the appropriate tools to stop either of these entities. Ultimately, Beck's plan is a house of cards, and his arrogance and lack of foresight doesn't allow him to see that what he's doing isn't in anybody's best interest, including his own. But then again, his interest was never with the world, it was with himself, and no man as self-absorbed as Beck bothers to put too much thought into the consequences of their actions, even if those consequences are eventually going to come back and bite them in the ass. A man so focused on winning the moment that he ignored the inevitable collapse of the future. And it was that same arrogance and egotism that led to his death. In his final battle with Spider-Man, Beck ignored Edith and ordered all his drones to fire near his position, risking his own safety in order to try to kill Spider-Man, which ended up backfiring on him both figuratively and literally. The last desperate attempt of a man so consumed with making himself into a god that ensured that his very mortal life would meet an untimely end. And though he did attempt to trick Peter one more time with his illusions here, by this point, it was all for naught. But Quentin Beck is not one to lay down and go quietly into the night. He's a man who always needs to have the last laugh. And Mysterio, despite lying defeated with his life force slowly draining away, showed that he had one last trick up his sleeve. While Quentin Beck wasn't able to make the impact on the world he wished to, he was able to make quite the posthumous impact on Peter Parker's life by weaponizing his own death, enabling his cohorts to frame Peter for the destruction of London, and thus painting Mysterio as the hero that tried to warn us about the impending danger of the arch-villain that is Spider-Man. And in revealing Spider-Man's identity to the rest of the world, he exacted his revenge against his former boss, his protege, and the world itself, as he achieved a level of destruction he never could have while he was alive. For he didn't just ruin Peter's reputation, he triggered a domino effect that led to the events in Spider-Man No Way Home. As without him, Peter would have never gone to Doctor Strange and accidentally summoned the other Spider-Man villains from across the multiverse, which means May Parker wouldn't have died at the hands of the Green Goblin, and Peter Parker wouldn't have felt forced to erase everyone's memories of him to save the world. A last laugh if there ever was one, for a man so obsessed with surpassing and destroying his adversaries. And at this end, what is there to say about Quentin Beck, the man who made himself into the ersatz hero that was Mysterio? He was a genius, a man that created revolutionary technology that he believed could change the world. But when he perceived his creation to be usurped and warped into becoming yet another tool for a man he only saw as a jester king, Beck became enraged, filled with hatred and envy for a man who he believed had taken everything from him. Spiteful and utterly consumed with himself and his own desires and ambitions, Quentin Beck proved himself to be a calculating, cunning, charismatic, and manipulative man who managed to fool nearly the entire world into believing him to be a superhero like none other. And through his efforts to become just that, he unleashed an enormous amount of suffering, death, and destruction, all for the sake of one man's desire to become the greatest hero who ever lived. The tragedy of Quentin Beck's character is that because he was the genius he was, he by all rights could have easily earned the respect he so craved naturally over time. But being a narcissist at his core, once he felt slighted, that genius became firmly rooted in the malicious. And a testament to that genius can be found in the fact that despite his death, he succeeded in becoming the hero he wanted to be. People need to believe, and nowadays, they'll believe anything. Beck understood the vulnerability of a world that had lost its protectors and capitalized on it. He knew that people are more comfortable basking in the warmth of a spectacular lie than a complicated truth, and so he gave them exactly what they wanted, a hero to believe in, all while hiding the bloody machinery that created it. But even here, in the end, with Beck a posthumous success, the truth of the matter is that Quentin Beck never was, nor will he ever be truly seen as the world's greatest genius, nor the world's greatest hero. For all he had made himself into was nothing but a lie, an illusion, a facade, a false narrative for a man who deserved not an ounce of the praise he received, and one who will for now will remain a largely unknown, yet thoroughly reprehensible evil. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on Mysterio? Did I miss anything? Let me know down below, and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured while you're at it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A big thank you to all of my subscribers, my patrons, anyone who's decided to honor me with a super thank, and especially our Dark Lord patrons, Elijah Kyvier, Mr. Awesome, Louis Dockstater, Just Keeping It Real, Lachlan, Atris Rain, Seltsopa, Him Downstairs, Oh God Why, Beep Boop, Lorenzo Antonino, Eli Livingston, Moondog, and Roberto Hernandez. And a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and subreddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.